Welcome to the Practical World Podcast, your gateway to work insights and captivating stories from Thailand and beyond. This is the real world. This is the Practical World Podcast.
Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because, well, you want to get smart about your money, right? But without feeling like you need a whole finance degree.
Yeah, exactly.
Think of this as your cheat sheet, understanding, saving, and investing. We're cutting through the noise to give you the essentials.
That's the plan. Today, our deep dive is all about building wealth, through saving and investing. We've got a pretty straightforward beginner's guide as our main source here.
Okay.
And our mission really is to pull out the absolute must-know steps. How to build a solid financial base, whether you're just starting out or maybe just finally ready to get organized.
Okay, so step one, according to this guide, it seems kind of obvious, maybe, but it's about really understanding where your money is right now.
It is often overlooked, though. It's
Yep.
crucial, getting that clear picture of your current financial landscape.
So how do you do that?
Well, first step is figuring out your actual take-home pay. What actually lands in your bank account each month after tax. Once you know that number, the next critical piece is tracking your spending. And you need to do it for at least a month. Every single expense.
Every single one, like even the small stuff.
Oh, yeah, big or small. Doesn't matter. You could use, I don't know, a notebook, a spreadsheet, maybe a budgeting app, whatever works for you, really.
Seriously, that daily coffee, the snack, that thing you bought online, it adds up, doesn't it?
It really does. Those leaks matter. And once you have that list, the guide says it's super helpful to categorize things.
Categorize.
Sort of like putting them in two main buckets. You've got your fixed expenses, things like rent, loan payments, utilities, stuff that's pretty consistent month to month.
Right.
And then the variable ones, entertainment, eating out, shopping, the spending that changes.
And why do that? What's the point of sorting?
Well, it helps you see the difference between your needs and your wants.
Yeah.
It's not about cutting out all the fun. It's just about making more conscious choices. Where could you maybe trim back a bit without really feeling it too much? You might be surprised. That $5 coffee every day, that's over $1,800 a year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that puts it in perspective. All right. So you get a handle on where the money's going. What's the next key step in this guide?
Setting some real tangible financial goals. Not just vague stuff like, I want to be rich,
Yeah.
but specific things you're actually aiming for.
Like what kind of things?
The guide talks about making them smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay. Smart goals.
Yeah. So think short-term, maybe saving for a vacation next year.
Hmm.
Medium-term, like a down payment on a house in, say, 5 years.
Right.
And long-term, the big one, usually retirement. Having these clear goals helps dictate how much you need to save and what kind of investment strategies might make sense.
And it's not just dreaming big, is it? The guide stresses being realistic based on your income and expenses now.
Absolutely. You've got to be honest with yourself. And it suggests breaking down those bigger goals into smaller sort of mini goals.
Makes sense, like climbing a ladder.
Exactly. That, say, $12,000 emergency fund feels way less scary if you just aim for $1,000 each month, one step at a time.
Yeah, those smaller wins probably help keep you motivated too.
They really do. That sense of accomplishment is important. So once you understand your income, your expenses, and what you're saving for, then you can build a budget that actually works.
A sustainable budget. The guide calls it a plan for your money, right? Just making sure you spend less than you earn and prioritize those goals we just talked about.
Precisely. It's just a roadmap.
So how do you actually do the budgeting? The guide mentions a few different ways.
Yeah, it outlines a few popular methods. There's the 50-30-20 rule. 50% of your after-tax income for needs, 30% for wants, 20% for savings and debt.
Okay.
Then there's zero-based budgeting. That's where every single dollar gets assigned a job.
Right, down to the last cent.
And then there's the envelope system, literally using cash in envelopes for different spending categories. Can be very effective for some people.
So you just pick one that suits you.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Find what clicks with your personality and your situation. But honestly, regardless of the method you choose, the guide highlights this core principle. Pay yourself first.
Pay yourself first. I like that. What does it mean exactly?
It means prioritizing your savings and investments right after you cover your absolute essential bills. Before you spend on the discretionary stuff, the wants.
So saving isn't just whatever's left over at the end of the month.
No, it's a deliberate action,
Right.
a priority. Our guide even shared this anecdote, remember? Someone kept their expenses incredibly low, like $600 a month on a decent salary,
Wow.
just so they could funnel almost everything else into investments early on. It just shows the power of being intentional.
That's pretty hardcore, but yeah, it makes the point. Okay, budget in place, paying yourself first. What's next for building that security?
The emergency fund. This is absolutely crucial. It's your financial safety net.
For those curveballs life throws at you.
Exactly. Sudden job loss, unexpected medical bill, car breaks down, stuff like that. It stops you from completely derailing your financial progress or having to go into debt when something unexpected happens.
Makes sense. How much should be in there?
The general rule of thumb the guide recommends is aiming for about 3 to 6 months worth of your essential living expenses.
3 to 6 months. Okay. And where do you keep that money? Just in your regular checking account.
Preferably not. The guide suggests opening a separate high-yield savings account specifically for this.
Why separate?
It creates a bit of a psychological barrier. It's easily accessible if you really need it for an emergency,
Yep.
but it's not quite so tempting to dip into for,
Out of
non-emergency.
sight, out of mind, sort of.
Kind of, yeah. And they even say, look, start small. Maybe just aim for $1,000 initially. Get that first win, build some momentum.
Yeah, that initial step can feel really good, give you some confidence.
Definitely. And just to put it in perspective, right? If your essential monthly bills are around $2,000, you'd be aiming for an emergency fund somewhere between, say, $6,000 and $12,000.
Okay. Sounds like a lot, but I can see how that would provide serious peace of mind.
It really does.
All right, emergency fund is getting built. Now, the part people probably get excited about, making your money grow. Our guide moves into different ways to save.
Yeah, and it stresses that the best option really depends on a few things, like how soon you think you'll need the money, your time horizon, how easily you need to access it, liquidity, and importantly, how comfortable you are with the risk of potentially losing some value.
Okay, so different tools for different jobs.
Yeah.
What about short-term goals? Stuff in the next year or two?
For those shorter term goals, the guide points towards things like high yield savings accounts, maybe money market accounts, or certificates of deposit CDs.
Right.
These are generally safe, your money's easy to get to, but the returns are usually pretty modest.
And for slightly longer goals, say 2 to 5 years out.
For that medium term, you might look at government savings bonds or maybe short term bond funds. They generally offer slightly higher returns than savings accounts, but they do come with a little bit more risk.
The guide mentioned some specific examples too, didn't it? Like for Singapore.
It did, yeah. It mentioned Singapore savings bonds, or SSBs, as a low-risk option backed by the government there, often giving better returns than standard savings.
Okay.
And it noted that in other countries, you look for similar things, treasury bills, government bonds. They tend to be stable ways to save with guaranteed returns. Good for preserving your capital while earning a bit of interest.
Got it. So how do we make sure we actually do this saving consistently? It's easy to forget or push it off.
Automation. The guide really stresses this. It's such a powerful tool for consistency.
How does that work?
Just setting up automatic transfers from your checking account straight into your savings account every single payday.
Set it and forget it.
Pretty much. Takes the willpower out of it each month. And the guide suggests, look, start with an amount you're comfortable with, even if it's just, say, 5% of your income to begin with.
Consistency over quantity, at first anyway.
Exactly. Be
Yeah.
consistent. Then, maybe as your income grows or you cut back on some expenses, you can gradually bump up that savings rate. The long-term goal may be aiming for 20% or even more of your income. Small steps add up hugely over time.
That compounding effect really kicks in with consistency.
It really does.
Yee.
And remember that comment in the guide. Someone said, strive to reach your $100,000 goal quickly, whether in cash or investments.
Yeah, that's ambitious, but it sets a target.
It's a great motivator, right? To really prioritize saving.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, understanding money, goals, budget, emergency fund, consistent saving. Now let's dive into investing itself. The guide makes a clear distinction between saving and investing, doesn't it?
It does. Investing is different. It's about putting your money into assets, things like stocks, bonds, maybe real estate, with the potential for that money to grow or generate income over long term.
But there's catch.
But yeah, it comes with risk. It's important to understand that. And there are some fundamental principles everyone should grasp before they start.
Okay, what are these core principles?
Well, first, there's the relationship between risk and return. Generally speaking, the higher the potential return an investment offers, the higher the risk involved. Safer investments usually mean lower potential returns,
Makes sense. No free lunch.
pretty much. Then there's diversification. You've probably heard the phrase, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
That's diversification. Spreading your investments across different types of assets, different industries, even different parts of the world. It helps reduce the impact if one specific investment tanks.
Okay. Spread the risk. What else?
Another really key one the guide emphasizes, time in the market generally beats timing the market.
Meaning, trying to guess the perfect time to buy or sell is usually a losing game.
Yeah, for most people it is. It's more about being invested for the long haul and riding out the ups and downs rather than trying to predict short-term moves.
Got it. Long-term perspective.
And finally, the big one, the power of compound interest or compound returns, really. This is where the earnings your investments make start generating their own earnings over time. It's like a snowball effect. It can seriously accelerate your wealth growth, especially over many years.
The magic of compounding. Okay, so principles understood. Where does a beginner actually start? It seems overwhelming.
The guide strongly recommends starting with low-cost index funds. They are fantastic for beginners
Why index funds specifically?
because they offer instant diversification. They typically hold hundreds, sometimes thousands of different stocks, often tracking a major market index like the S&P 500 in the US.
So you're buying a tiny piece of the whole market in one go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Small slice of lots of companies. And a huge advantage is their fees. The expense ratios are usually very, very low.
Which means more of your money actually stays invested and working for you.
Precisely. Less gets eaten up by fees. Plus, they're relatively hands-off. They don't require deep investment knowledge or constant monitoring, which is perfect if you're just starting or, have a busy life.
Low cost, diversified, easy. Sounds good.
Yeah, and the guide even included that practical tip from a commenter, remember. Set up a brokerage account, pick one broad market ETF, like one tracking the S&P 500, and just practice dollar cost averaging monthly.
Right, dollar cost averaging. Let's break that down. What exactly is DCA?
So our guide explains it as a really simple strategy. You invest a fixed amount of money at regular intervals, say $200 every month, no matter what the market is doing. Up, down, sideways, doesn't matter. Same amount, same schedule.
Okay, investing consistently regardless of price. Why is that good?
Well, it has a few key advantages, especially for beginners. First, it helps take the emotion out of it. You're not trying to guess if it's a good or bad time to buy.
Removes the timing temptation.
Exactly. And mathematically, what happens is when prices are lower, your fixed dollar amount buys more shares. When prices are higher, it buys fewer shares. So over time, it can help average out your purchase price.
So you might end up paying a lower average price per share than if you tried to time it.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes investing feel manageable. You can start with smaller, regular contributions instead of needing a huge lump sum.
So how do you actually do DCA?
It's simple. Decide on a consistent amount you can realistically invest each month or each pay period. Maybe it's $100, maybe $500. Then set up an automatic transfer from your bank account to your brokerage or investment account on that regular schedule. Like clockwork,
Automation again.
automation is your friend here.
Yep.
And the guide added a little nuance to that comment about maybe DCAing every 2 months if you're investing smaller amounts, like under $1,500 a month,
Why would you do that?
just to potentially minimize transaction costs. Depending on your brokerage, buying less frequently might save you a bit on fees, though many offer free ETF trades now. Something to check.
Okay, good tip. So index funds and DCA are a solid start. What comes after that? How do you build out from there?
Once you're comfortable with those basics, the guide talks about building a more diversified portfolio through something called asset allocation.
Asset allocation. Sounds fancy.
It's just about deciding how to divide your investments among the main categories or asset classes, usually stocks, bonds, and cash or cash equivalents.
And how do you decide the right mix? Is there a formula?
Well, the ideal mix depends on you, your investment timeline, how long until you need the money, your risk tolerance, how comfortable you are with potential ups and downs, and of course, your specific financial goals.
So someone younger might do it differently than someone closer to retirement.
Generally, yes. Younger investors with a long time horizon often allocate more to stocks. Stocks have historically offered higher growth potential over the long run, but they also come with more volatility, bigger swings in value.
Okay, more growth potential, more bumps in the road.
Right. Whereas as you get closer to needing the money, especially for something like retirement, the guide suggests gradually shifting more towards conservative investments like bonds.
Why bonds?
Bonds tend to be less volatile than stocks. They can help preserve the wealth you've built up. The guide mentions that old rule of thumb. Subtract your age from 110 to get a rough percentage for stocks.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. So a 30-year-old might aim for 80% stocks, 20% bonds?
Something like that. But remember, it's just a very general guideline. Your personal comfort level with risk is really important. Some 30-year-olds might want less risk, some might want more.
Right, personalize it. Okay, so after getting comfortable with maybe a broad US or global index fund, where might you look next if you want to expand?
The guide suggests a few potential additions once you've got your feet wet. You could look at international index funds to get exposure to markets outside your home country.
More diversification globally. It's exactly. Or bond funds to add stability to your portfolio. Maybe sector specific ETFs if you feel you have particular insight into an industry like tech or healthcare, though that adds concentration risk.
Okay.
You could also consider REITs, real estate investment trusts. They let you invest in real estate without actually having to buy and manage properties yourself.
Interesting. What about things like dividends?
Yeah, as your knowledge grows, the guide mentions looking into dividend focused investments. These are companies that pay out a portion of their profits to shareholders regularly, can be a source of income.
The guide had that specific comment about Singaporean banks during a downturn for dividends, right?
It did. But it also wisely cautioned that picking individual stocks, whether for dividends or growth, takes a lot more research and involves significantly more risk than sticking with diversified funds.
Definitely need to know what you're doing there.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned fees earlier with index funds, but the guide really hammers home the importance of low costs overall, doesn't it? Oh, absolutely. It's a recurring theme, and for good reason. Even seemingly tiny differences in the fees you pay, like 0.5% difference in an annual expense ratio, can have a massive impact on your returns over decades.
Tens of thousands of dollars difference potentially.
Easily, maybe even more over a long investing lifetime. So you really need to pay attention to things like expense ratios, any transaction costs your broker charges, and management fees, especially on actively managed funds.
So compare funds carefully.
Definitely. Compare the expense ratios of similar funds. As we said, low-cost index funds can be below 0.1%. Actively managed funds, where managers try to beat the market, are often much higher, 0.5%, 1%, sometimes even more.
And do those actively managed funds usually beat the market by enough to justify the higher fees?
Historically, most of them don't, especially after accounting for their fees. And it's worth noting, many brokerages now offer commission-free trading on lots of ETFs and mutual funds, which helps keep those transaction costs down too.
And that commenter's warning about high fee advisors.
Right. The guide included that strong caution. Be wary of advisors or firms known for high fees or excessive trading. The takeaway is clear. Be very aware of what you're paying in fees because it directly impacts your bottom line. Look for low-cost options whenever possible.
Got it. Fees matter. Lot. Okay, so as you get more experienced, the guide mentions strategic investing. What's that about?
It's basically moving beyond just the initial setup. As your portfolio grows and your knowledge increases, you might start making more deliberate, strategic decisions about your asset allocation to fine-tune your risk and return.
Like what kind of decisions?
Things like rebalancing your portfolio regularly. If stocks have done really well and now make up too large a percentage of your mix, you might sell some stocks and buy more bonds to get back to your target allocation.
Maintaining the balance.
Exactly. Or exploring tax optimization strategies, ways to minimize the taxes you pay on investment gains, like using tax-advantaged accounts or maybe tax loss harvesting if appropriate. It also includes adjusting your allocation as your goals get closer, like we discussed with shifting towards bonds near retirement. And maybe, just maybe, considering alternative investments like private equity or commodities. But that's usually for more sophisticated investors.
And this links back to those 5 stages of investing the guide mentioned.
Yeah, it pointed out that this kind of diversification and strategic thinking is more like the 4th stage, something you build towards after you've got the basics, stable accounts, emergency fund, and initial investments solidly in place. Foundation first.
Makes sense. Build from the ground up. Now, life happens, things change. How does the guide suggest adapting your strategy for major life events?
That's a key point. Your strategy shouldn't be static. It needs to evolve with your life. The guide highlights the importance of reviewing and potentially adjusting things when major events occur.
Like getting married.
Yeah, getting married or entering a partnership. Maybe you need to combine finances, align your goals. Buying a home is a big one, impacts your cash flow. Maybe you save for the down payment.
Starting a family.
Huge impact. New expenses, new savings goals like education funds. career transitions too, changes in income or benefits, and of course the big one, planning for and entering retirement. That requires a major shift towards wealth preservation and income generation.
So for each stage, you reassess, like maybe increasing your emergency fund when you have kids or getting more conservative with investments as retirement nears.
Exactly. Maybe bumping the emergency fund up towards 12 months of expenses, definitely shifting towards more conservative investments to protect what you've built as you approach the time you need to start drawing down on it.
It's an ongoing process then, which leads to another point the guide stressed, continuing financial education.
Absolutely essential. The financial world changes new products, new regulations, economic shifts. You need to keep learning.
How do they suggest doing that?
Reading trusted financial books and websites, following reputable experts online, carefully vetting them, of course, maybe even consulting a fee-only financial advisor periodically, someone who isn't earning commissions selling you products.
And didn't the guide specifically mention exploring John Bogle's ideas?
Yes, strongly encouraged it. He was the founder of Vanguard and really pioneered the whole concept of low-cost index fund investing. His principles are incredibly valuable for long-term investors.
Okay, so keep learning. Now, besides just understanding what to do, the guide also spent time on pitfalls, things to avoid, particularly certain investment products.
Yes, it issued some specific warning. One big one was investment-linked policies, or ILPs.
What are those again?
They bundle insurance coverage with an investment component, but the guide warns they often come with very high fees, complex structures, and aren't very flexible.
And there was that commenter story about them.
Yeah, a real cautionary tale. Someone felt their ILP significantly set back their financial progress for several years due to the high costs and poor performance. Definitely something to approach with extreme caution.
What else should people be wary of?
High fee, actively managed funds. As we discussed, they often underperform their benchmarks anyway. Also, complex derivatives or structured products. These can have hidden risks and costs that aren't obvious, really not suitable for beginners.
And things like crypto or penny stocks.
The guide advises extreme caution there too. Treat them as speculative. Only consider them after you have a solid financial foundation built, and even then, only with a very small percentage of your portfolio that you can truly afford to lose. They're highly volatile.
So avoid complexity and high fees, basically, and speculation until you're established. But it's not just the products, right? Our own emotions can trip us up.
Oh, big time. Emotional decision-making is one of the biggest obstacles to successful investing. The guide highlighted some common traps.
Like FOMO, fear of missing out.
Exactly. Seeing something skyrocket and jumping in without doing your research, often near the top.
Mm.
Or the opposite. Panic selling when the market drops, locking in your losses instead of riding it out.
Or getting cocky after a few wins.
Yeah. Overconfidence, thinking you can't lose, leading you to take on way too much risk.
So how do you avoid these emotional traps?
The best defense is having a solid, well-reasoned investment plan based on your actual goals and your risk tolerance before things get crazy, and then discipline sticking to that plan even when it feels uncomfortable.
Automation probably helps there too. Takes the decision out of your hands each month.
It really does. Automating your investments, like with DCA, helps remove that day-to-day emotional trigger.
Okay, another pitfall mentioned was lifestyle inflation. What's that?
That's the tendency for our spending to increase as our income increases. You get a raise, you buy a fancier car, eat out more, bigger apartment. Your lifestyle inflates to match your new income.
And the problem is that prevents you from saving and investing more.
Exactly. If all your extra income goes to extra spending, your savings rate stays flat or might even drop. You don't actually get ahead financially as quickly as you could.
So what's the advice?
Make a conscious effort. When you get a raise or a bonus, decide upfront to direct a good portion, maybe even all of it, initially straight to your savings or investments before you adjust your lifestyle spending.
Be intentional about saving the increase.
Yeah. That commenter in the guide mentioned how real the pressure is to keep up with others and how important being mindful of lifestyle inflation is.
Okay, so lots of practical steps, principles, and pitfalls. As we start to wrap this up, what's the overarching message from the guide?
I think the main takeaway is that building wealth is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint. It takes time, patience, consistency. But the financial habits you develop early on, even small ones, have a huge impact down the road.
So focus on the long game.
Definitely. Start with that essential emergency fund that's non-negotiable, then gradually build a diversified investment portfolio that actually aligns with your personal goals and your comfort level with risk.
And don't expect to be perfect right away.
Not at all. Consistency is way more important than perfection. You'll learn as you go. Mistakes might happen. The market will definitely fluctuate. That's normal. The key is having a disciplined approach and committing to continuously educating yourself.
So the most crucial thing is just starting.
Absolutely. Take action today. The guide really encourages listeners to start right where they are with whatever they have right now. Focus first on getting that clear picture, track your spending, make a budget, then build that emergency fund buffer, and then start learning about basic investing.
I like that quote from the comment.
Yeah, the first step to investing is saving. Investing is just selecting good spots to park savings for longer-term financial goals. Puts it simply, doesn't it?
It does. So just take the first step.
Take that first small step today, whatever it is. Track 1 week's spending. Open that separate savings account. Read an article about index funds. No matter how small it seems, it's the start of the journey.
Okay, so in this deep dive, we've really covered the fundamentals, haven't we? From understanding your starting point, setting clear goals, budgeting effectively.
To building that crucial emergency fund, understanding different savings options, and then diving into basic investing principles like diversification and that amazing power of compound interest.
Yeah, and we looked at practical starting points like low-cost index funds using dollar cost averaging, the importance of keeping fees super low.
And also being really aware of those common traps, dodgy products, emotional investing, lifestyle creep. It's a lot, but it forms a solid foundation.
And this whole exploration was really designed to give you, the listener, clarity and a solid starting point on your own financial path.
Hopefully cut through some of the noise out there.
So here's a final thought to leave you with as you process all this. Now that you have a clearer grasp of these fundamentals, what's one small, concrete action you can commit to taking, maybe even today, to move yourself closer to your financial goals?
Just take a moment. Reflect on what we talked about. What resonated most with you? What feels like the most important next step for your situation? And then just make that first move.
Thank you for joining. This is the Practical World Podcast.